You want to make a gin, but you're not sure which type of gin to make. Let me go help you distinguish some of the most popular types there are. Hey everyone, Distiller Greyling here, one of your favorite home and hobby distillers. Today I want to talk gin, and more precisely, what's the different types of gins there are and how do you differentiate between the lot of them. Let's first start off with what is gin. Gin is a type of spirit characterized by the flavor of the juniper berries. Different country laws prescribe that gin can only be a spirit with the following characteristics. The main flavor must be juniper. There must be a minimum alcohol content of 37.5 to 43% alcohol, depending on which country or origins you are from. And last but not least, the neutral alcohol that you use must be from a neutral or natural source, meaning barley or wheat or rye, molasses, potatoes or grapes. So basically gin is a flavored spirit, but is it entirely a juniper flavored vodka? Let's go find out. The difference comes in with what happens before and after distillation. When you have that neutral alcohol and you start infusing it with juniper berries, it starts to become a gin. Now you've got different other botanicals as well that you can add into your gin, and as you redistill it again, you can get that piney hibiscus flavor that's signature to a gin. Vodka on the other hand, you will just keep on redistilling it until you almost get to a neutral point where there's just a hint of that grain that's still left. Gin originated as a medicinal liquor made long ago by monks and alchemists deep in the European country. Gin became popular in England by the introduction of Jenever, a Dutch-Belgian liquor that was originally a medicine. Gin became widespread in England here by 1688 by the Glorious Revolution led by William of Orange. The restriction of French brandy being imported to England led to the uprising of gin, and gin then subsequently became the national drink of England here in the 1700s. After several gin acts were forced into practice, Old Tom Gin was created and became very popular with the Old Tom cat statues. With the introduction of the column stills a few years later, you had the creation of London Dry Gin that we are so familiar with these days. Gin today is produced in different ways with a wide range of ingredients. And that's why we sometimes get these distinct brands or a distinct style that we're going after for. After juniper, gin tends to be flavored with botanical, spicy, floral or citrus flavors or a combination of the bunch. Quinine is used to combat malaria in the British colonies. And this quinine was then dissolved in carbonated water to form a tonic water. To mask the bitterness of the quinine, gin was added to this tonic water, and that's where the popular gin and tonic or G&T comes from. With the many different types of gin out there available in the world today, I want to look at some popular types and some new types that are out there. I want to look at Jenever, Old Tom, London Dry, Plymouth Gin, International Style Gin and Reserve Gin. Jenever gin is also known as Jenever, Picket or sometimes just Holland or Dutch gin. Jenever is the precursor to the modern day gin. Originated in the 16th century for medicinal uses by a Dutch chemist, it stands apart in several ways from the normal gin. Jenever's gin's robust flavor is primarily due to the reason the base grains they use is malted. The malt flavor outshines the juniper, and this allows the taster to experience that unique malty, earthy, savory flavor. As a result, it's only lightly flavored with juniper compared to other gins. Those malted grains gives Jenever gin a type of a darker flavor, almost like a botanical whiskey, but still with a light body. Jenever gin is usually sipped straight or but chilled rather than mixing it in a martini or a cocktail. Old Tom Gin is a sweet gin. It's sometimes said it's between a London Dry and a Jenever gin because of the sweet flavor and dry body. This type of gin came into existence when distilling techniques were still new and very primitive. Distillers would end up using sulfuric acid and turpentine to cut their spirits, and sometimes making their spirits even deadly. To make the gin more drinkable, they would sometimes add licorice and sugars in to make it more sweeter. As technology advances and distilling techniques improve, so did the gin. And later years it was not necessary anymore to add that a lot of sweetener into the gin, and it came to more being a drier gin as we tend to know it today. But how did Old Tom Gin got its name? Now this is a tricky question, because it implies that the answer might be an animal and not a human. During gin's heyday in 18th century England, the slang expression for a black cat was Old Tom. So even though Old Tom might have been the general term used, it really got associated with this specific type of gin, this Old Tom style gin. One case was that a black cat fell into a vat and gave this gin this particular taste. However, the creation of this style of gin more likely lies with Thomas Chamberlain, a gin connoisseur and an early gin compounder. Thomas Chamberlain had an apprentice, Thomas Norris, which left his distillery to open up a gin palace. Norris would then sell gin out of the casks that he bought from distillers around Europe. Norris named Thomas Chamberlain's gin the Old Tom, kind of like a compliment to his old boss. But what is up with this creepy cat statue? Now in that period, a large amount of gin was produced. Even though it was of a poor quality, it was consumed with such enthusiasm by the working class, it almost paralyzed them. With the Gin Act of 1736, the UK government imposed high license fees on gin. Because of those high fees, gin production and drinking flourished in the underground. Guys were still making gin, but only selling it in secret. A forward-thinking entrepreneur going by the name of Captain Dudley Bradstreet came up with a poly to get the gin to the guys who needed them most. And so the Bradstreet cat, or the Old Tom cat, was born. You would build this black cat statue of an Old Tom cat and place it outside your building to let the guys know that you are selling gin. The transaction is as follows. A gin wanter would walk up to the statue and say, "Puss, do you have any gin?" The bartender on the other side would say meow and then open up the mouth of the statue for the gin drinker to insert some coins. Once the bartender has got the coins, he would then add 1 cup or 1 measure of gin into a holder that will flow with a pipe all the way to the pipe's paw on the outside. The gin wanter would then capture this gin into a cup, or some of them would just put their mouth straight onto the cat's paw and drink it from there. And that's how you can still drink your gin secretly without attracting any attention. As the Gin Act was repealed and things started to normalize, ginning techniques got better and London Dry Gin almost completely replaced Old Tom Gin. It was soon frowned upon using sugar to disguise the juniper spirit, almost like you are trying to hide away that dry juniper taste. London Dry is what the average person thinks of gin. This gin is very dry with a piquant taste of juniper. The term dry refers to that there's no added sugars, and all the botanicals including juniper comes from natural sources. As you might suspect, London Dry was formulated in England, but these days it's made worldwide. London Dry Gin doesn't have to be made in England or even the UK to be called a London Dry Gin, as long as you just follow the strict requirements that it's made of. The strict manufacturing specifications of a London Dry Gin is as follows. No artificial flavors might be added during the distillation phase. The ethanol must be of agricultural nature, and all your botanicals must be added in during the distillation phase and nothing afterwards. Juniper is typically the most immediate detectable flavor in a London Dry Gin. It's then followed with citrus, angelica root and coriander on the back end. In order to increase the flowery or botanical flavor, distillers would inject this London Dry Gin with aromatic flavors. During the second and third distillation, distillers would use different types of botanicals to get to that signature brand that their distillery is known for. Most London Dry Gin producers bottle their gin at a higher proof or a high ABV content. This makes it very versatile to be used in different types of cocktails, martinis, shaken or stirred. As I've described above, London Dry Gin might have connections to the capital city of England, namely London, but it doesn't mean it has to be made in London. But this is very different for Plymouth Gin. Plymouth Gin is inextricably linked to the English city of Plymouth, and it benefits from a protective designation of origin. Plymouth Gin may only be distilled and bottled in Plymouth by the Plymouth Gin Distillery. They were opened up in 18th century and also goes by the company name the Blackfriars Distillery. The location of the production of the distillery for Plymouth Gin is not the only unique feature it has. It's not as dry as a London Dry, yet not as sweet as the lovely Old Tom. Even though juniper berries and coriander seeds are the dominant ingredients in this type of gin, Plymouth Gin gets this sweetness from the fact that the Blackfriars Distillery focus on roots in their botanicals. The roots give it a more earthy flavour, a more softer and rounder taste. Agricultural neutral alcohol is used, which is then triple distilled with these specifically selected botanicals. Plymouth Gin is injected with this heavy mixture of roots that give it this earthy flavour that you will not find in any other gin. New expressions of gin are appearing around the globe seemingly every day. From Spain to Japan, from Brazil to the United States, and each of them uses their local geographical area and local botanicals to bring a distinct flavour, free from that strict characteristics that a London Dry gin has. Take Japan as an example. While Japan might be very known for their whiskies and other more traditional drinks like sake, gin is also becoming very popular in the land of the rising sun. It's common for Japanese gins to be crafted from the more traditional sokoe, and some distillers even use sweet potato instead of sugarcane. Gin created in Japan has a distinct oriental taste and is made from hand selecting these native botanicals. While Western gins might carry the flavors of aniseed and lavender, orange and rosemary, Japanese gin is typically made using fewer botanicals and most importantly use native botanicals like your cherry blossoms, your Japanese citrus, variety of shade-grown green teas and a variety of indigenous citruses. Last is our reserve gin. It's a type of unofficial gin and most distillers actually go by the alternative term of an aging gin. The production process for reserve gin is basically the same as for any other gin. You still have to distill it with juniper to get that distinct gin flavor, but it's just stored in wooden barrels after the distillation period. The unique feature for reserve gin comes in with the barrel. The amount of time that it's spent inside the barrel and the type of barrel that is used. In most countries there's still no specific time of how long it needs to be aged or what type of wood is to be used. So it's up to the distillery to make that their own unique feature of their specific reserve gin. When tasting, you should pay attention to the amount of time the gin was inside this barrel or when it was stored inside this wood container. The rule of thumb is the longer is left inside or stored inside a barrel, the more and heavier the wood aroma would be. Another characteristic to consider is the type of wood that's used. Was it a first use barrel or a pre-used barrel? Was it cherry inside or a type of wine? And that flavors will also be drawn out and give that gin a distinctive and specific type of flavor. Alright, that was a lot of information, so let's have a quick recap. First up, we have our Jenever gin. That was the precursor to most gins and it has a strong malty flavor because of the malted grains they used. Second up, we had the Old Tom gin. That was the one that was kind of made illegally and they had to sweeten it. These days, Old Tom gins are still popular and still has that very sweet flavor. Thirdly, we have our London Dry gin. That's the one with no added sugars and has a particular dry taste. That's the most common gin that we used in most of our cocktails these days. Plymouth Gin was strictly made and bottled by the Plymouth Gin Distillery in Plymouth itself. It uses that roots to give it that earthy flavor and soft and round taste. We also have our international style gins. Those gins are specifically styled according to the geographical area. Like we said, the Japan has got the more oriental flavor. And then lastly, we had our reserve gin. That's more about the aging or the storing effect that you add to your gin. It can be made any of the other gins that you just store in a wooden barrel and let it age for a while. I hope it helps you guys to distinguish between the different types of gin we had out there. Until I see you again, as always remember to be awesome, to be kind and be yourself. Cheers.